Hello, and welcome to another episode on the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast. Today, we are going to focus our chat on the transition to school. Now, there's so many transitions around this time of year. It might be changing schools, even for older children. It might be the transition from daycare to kindy or kindy to school. And it's really, really important to have this conversation to set families up for success during this time. We know that it can be tricky. So today we're really going to look at this through the lens of a clinician, a parent, and also a business owner. So with that being said, let's get stuck in and talk about how we manage transitions with all of those three hats.
We are child development obsessed business besties and mums, and we're here to spill all our secrets.
We have a combined 30 years experience working with children, and each episode we will bring you up-to-date research and evidence-based strategies to set your children up to thrive.
I'm Lizzy Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist,
And this is the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast.
Hey Em, how are you?
Hi, Lizzy. That's a lot of hats. Three
I know.
angles,
Well, it's
right?
not many
For the
really. I feel
transition.
like that's manageable.
It's manageable. I feel like each area in itself is like so big.
Yeah.
Even just where we're at now, like as parents, I'm like, that is huge, just trying to manage transitions. You have way more experience than I do with this sort of stuff because your boys are a
Well,
little bit older.
yeah, I think you're kind of wearing those three hats at the same time right now.
Mm.
Whereas I feel like I'm wearing the business hat, a little, like obviously the mum hat. I mean,
But
because
your
even
kids all have
now
already started school, haven't they?
they
Like
have. So
yeah.
Flinny is going into grade 3 and Marley is going into grade 1. So, but with that being said, we just found out last week, who the new teachers were and who's in their class. And Flinny didn't get his two little best mates in his class. And so
Oh.
he was so upset. Like, I mean, he's got friends in his class, he's totally fine, but there's two that have been in his class since kindy prep 1 and 2, and they got in the same class and he didn't. And it's like they're his safe people. He was really upset. So it's
That's
interesting.
hard.
I feel like we're going to have another transition and he'll be fine, but it's just,
Mm.
managing that towards going back to school. And then, of course, in a couple of years, if we move in grade 5, which we may do, we'll have that. And we're already talking about that. Like he's already talking about, they must
Mm.
all talk about it. So,
Mm.
um,
So you do
yeah,
have a different level of transition.
yeah, it just evolves,
Um,
I think.
yeah, that's a good perspective to know.
Mm,
Because I'm at the start, right? So Evie's just
mm,
finished prep in New South Wales, or her preparation year before starting formal schooling full
mhm.
time. And so she starts kindy or that formal schooling for 5 days a week, next year.
Yeah,
So we're
yeah.
having that big transition. And I feel like it's just been a big time of year because there's been so many activities to transition her, like
Mm,
graduation, concerts,
mm,
finishing like having last days, presents, final work, like there's all these little activities that add up to transition. And it's really interesting to how she's responding. And I was saying to Mackie, like my personal opinion would have been like the more that preempt your child and talk to them about it and, you know, make sure they know what's happening, that I would have thought that that's better. But then sometimes I think the more she knows, the more freaked out she gets. So
yeah.
that's not helpful. And it, yeah, I feel like it's going both ways at the moment. So
Mm,
it's just tricky. And obviously, first time parent, she's asking me all these questions that I'm having to say to her, I actually don't know because this is our first
mm,
time doing it too. And,
mm.
she's obviously thinking it through in her head, but it's hard as a parent to say, I don't know what the answer is because I don't want to give her something that's wrong. Like it's just a logistical question. I'm
Yeah, it's
saying this is
tricky,
our
isn't
first
it?
time as well. We don't know like what happens on X, Y, and Z. But yeah.
Well, I think there's something in that. One, I think, like, as we know, kids like predictability to feel safe.
Mm,
So, and when you can't provide that, or even when you're giving them information and they haven't experienced the information that you're giving them. So they're kind of like, that might freak them out because they're like, oh, well, that's not predictable. I don't know what they're talking about.
mm,
But then I think there's like an opportunity to say, we're in this together. We actually don't know either. And, it's making me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Are you feeling a little bit uncomfortable? Like being in that
mm,
transition together, I think is quite,
mm.
an opportunity to connect, I think, during that.
Yeah, yeah. It's that's what I've been doing because I don't know what else to do. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
we're the same. But yeah, I mean, she is asking lots of questions every day about what's happening and there's so like I mean, practically there's so many things, from uniforms to lunchboxes to routines to um they have this buddy system, like and she has like 3 or 4 different uniforms that she has to wear. So she's
Mm,
asking lots of questions around that. And because she's been at the school the last 12 months, they've given her a lot of information. She's had a lot of transition going into the classroom. She's like, who's my teacher? Which one? What are their names again? And just asking so many questions about it, which is really good, is really good. But
mm,
then I also then think like from a clinician, like that's my mum brain, right? From my clinician point of view, I then think, oh, this is like not, her questions are a lot, but they're not even scraping the surface of actually then what are the developmental skills that we need as
mm,
well, which we
mm.
know as clinicians, there's so much there. And, the like from my point of view, the language, the emotional, the social, the regulation, all of that as well. And so I think
Yeah.
it's actually quite a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Because you kind of transition from that like play-based model
Mm,
into a bit more structured learning. And I think as parents, you don't know how, I mean, you can have an idea of how they're going to respond, but you don't really know how they're going
mm,
to respond because it's more structured than what they've done before. You can obviously
mm,
prepare them at home and through their therapies if they're in therapies. And I think it's obviously really good to have therapies from a clinician perspective. It's really good to have therapies um, at throughout that transition, I mean.
mm,
I quite often say to my team, um, you know, we will have parents that cancel because they're saying, oh, we're starting school, so we're just going to
mm,
cancel for first term. And I'm like, look, from a clinical perspective, that consistency carrying you through is really important, and particularly having those supports during that time of transition when everything else is changing, like changing as little as possible is
mm,
clinically, I think, a better support system for the child. Obviously, it's going to vary from person to person, but I try to upskill my team with having those conversations about, what their clinical perspective and on how that child is, going to manage that transition. What can we do to set them up for success? Obviously, for us, it comes to their regulation, their, movement strategies for core strength so that they can sit and focus and they can, sit comfortably and then the social perspective and
mm,
then regulation, obviously, as well. So we kind of look at all of that from the therapeutic sense, I guess. And as I've talked about before, we have like a holiday program. So I feel like that's a nice little transition into and giving us the information because quite often our therapy will be one-on-one. So having a
mm,
group and seeing them in that group setting and a little bit more, it's very play-based, but there's still a little bit more structure to the day. So getting that information through that holiday program is really good for us to be able to provide strategies and help manage that transition into school.
mm,
Uh, so yeah, there's lots of different things I think you can do from like particularly the clinician perspective and the parent perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's a juggle for parents, and it can be
Mm,
tricky for the children, if they're in therapies and starting school. But, practically it can be helpful just to walk through with parents. Okay, well, what can we do to help your child? So whether that's coming for an early morning session before school, if that helps
mm,
because they get so tired. I mean, we're talking going from preschool to kindy, but I guess even starting a new grade, right? Like you said, there's like change for Flinny, even though he's been at school for a few years. So whether we need to be considering, the child's energy levels for that first term or whatever it is,
mm.
first half term, and then maybe adjusting appointments and working with the parents to sort of figure that out. Maybe if your child comes at a certain intensity or frequency, like say they come twice a week, you dial it back to once a week, but it's
Mm,
still having the consistency there for them. And most therapists then should be, if they have, like they should have already in the term like lead up, particularly in November, December, been targeting school readiness type goals, like you mentioned, but
yes.
also from our side. But then in January, targeting speech and language goals, and then, well, like, sorry, school transition goals,
Yeah.
and then in February, school transition goals. So it's meant to, the therapies are meant to be supporting the child in that transition. And so maybe it's a little bit of education to parents as well
Yeah.
about that and the priority around that um, in that process. So it's not meant to add something to their child's schedule, but to
Mm.
support them in that. And I think like just being really transparent with parents about that process.
I agree. I think that that is what we're doing as clinicians. I think we really I find that we continuously have to improve on is that education piece because I think naturally we will be doing this in sessions and it is quite conscious because we're thinking about what is happening for that child. I just think that sometimes we let ourselves down by not communicating that.
Mm,
And I think that's really, really important but also, I always say to my team, like, we need to be giving parents strategies to go home with. And I really feel that as a parent, like, what are you noticing in the session? What can I be doing at home? Let's like keep it consistent. What can I be practicing? What's working in sessions? What's not working in sessions? What are your recommendations? And, and then tying that into that transition, I think is
mm,
really important because that is going to, you know, be the pillar that gets them to consistently come to therapy, which is going to support that child. So I think, what's in the best interest of the child, and how is that going to work? And then I think logistically, you need to look at how it's actually going to work. Like you say, is it going to be morning sessions, afternoon sessions? Are they going to pull their child out of school to do it? We do have
mm,
quite a few. We do a lot of school visits. Some schools it's no dramas. Some schools we can't go into, so it's just working that out with plenty of time so that we can manage our schedule and make sure that we can keep that consistency. Because again, we want if the child really needs it, I think we need to be on the front foot of organizing that and making sure that we can offer that consistency for them and getting ourselves organized so that we can continue to provide that therapy in a way that's going to work for the child. And then it's working in with the school because quite often when you're doing the school visit, you then need to collaborate with the teacher, which is
mm.
amazing because that's what we should be doing. But you need to
Yes.
collaborate with the teacher about when would be the best time. So it's definitely logistically a little bit more to do. So I think giving yourself plenty of time to do
Mm.
that. Now, teachers are usually go back mid-January. So if people haven't done this already, then it's something that needs to be done as soon as we come back, really, from the Christmas break to get
Summer
that
break. Yeah.
organized. Yeah.
Yeah. The teachers probably are more free in that time before class goes back, right?
Mm,
Classes normally go back end of January, so they have a bit of time in there to, or I guess educated preschool's different and then school's different, but they have a bit of
yeah.
time in there to, like it's a bit slower to do
Yeah.
that.
And I think, to keeping in mind that the teachers potentially haven't met the student. So I
Mm.
think there's an opportunity there to reach out to the teacher and just say, I am working with little Frankie. This is what we're working on. This is how we're setting the transition into school. I really want to organize coming into school and doing some
Mm.
sessions. I can work in with you. These are the times I'm available. What's your
Yeah.
kind of schedule? Because they may not know, because we kind of like to, it's different for every child. Some kids, don't want to miss certain classes because they're really important to them or their family. Um, and then we will sometimes, it might be, for example, or when do you find that they're really struggling, and can we come in and
Mm.
around that time to provide some strategies for the child, the teacher, the family.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's kind of working in with that family, but I think allowing enough time to, you know, get that right, I think is required.
And it's important that you set the expectation with the teacher. It may be a one-off depending on the child, but if their needs are, you feel like they're needing more, or you're needing more observation to see how they're going, it might be a few sessions, like setting those expectations, or it might be therapy ongoing in the classroom if that's appropriate, if that's an option. It's
Mm,
sort of, I think it's viewing the transition process as a process. Like
mm,
transition isn't just a moment. And I think as a parent, I can forget that. And then as a clinician, I can forget that because as adults, we move on and transition like quite quickly. But for a
mm,
child, transition can be going on for like ages, so like 6 to 12 months. But in our minds, we're like, oh, the transition was a moment, it happened, they had their first day of school, whatever year that is, the transition's done, but it's not a
mm.
moment, it's a process. So it's then
Totally.
figuring that out with the child as well and supporting the family along with that because,
Mm,
it's like we said, it's emotions, regulation, all of that. And if the parents are going, hang on, like what's happening here? This is still really, like there's still lots of big emotions. I'm feeling like there's lots of pressure going, well, because we're still in the transition, right? It's not
Yeah,
just
well, it's
one
a
day.
transition, it's an ongoing transition because everything in that first 12 months, particularly in a new environment, is going to be new. Like there's sports
Yeah.
days, there's I don't know, free dress day, there's, I don't know, when like I think Flinny's going into grade 3, he's going to start doing NAPLAN. Like that's going to be a whole
Oh,
thing
yeah.
for us.
Yes.
There's so many different things, and I think the energy levels, as with us as parents and people,
Mhm.
they go up and down. Like I find the end of term one, there's quite a lot of exhaustion. Like by the end of terms, everyone's tired. I think we
Mm.
were really tired this term. We were really tired at, going into our overseas trip. I think the end
Yeah.
of the first year is a really big one.
Yeah.
So I think it's like it definitely is a process, and I feel like it keeps going, and it's just that's why I think that if they're in therapy and they're needing that support, keeping that support in place and consistent but flexible in its approach is
Mm.
really important, and I think that's a really important conversation for clinicians to be having with parents and parents to be having with clinicians as well.
Mm. And like we're saying, so you got clinicians, parents, and then putting on our business hat, like we spoke about at the start, it's just then having that discussion again with how we can map the sessions out, what we can do with the therapy, and then trying to be flexible, I think, from term to term with how those appointments look and what that support looks like so that there's consistency there, right?
Yeah, and I think it's just like we've been on a journey the last couple of years, as you know, like from going private kindy based programs to more complex needs, a lot of NDIS. And then we've obviously
Mm.
got this whole new funding stream this year, so who knows what that's going to bring.
Yeah.
And we had goals to be all clinic based by April next year, but we've realized that that leaves some big gaps in our servicing,
Mm.
and so we're kind of not pivoting back, but we're going, actually, it's really important for us to have that diversification of services, and some are going to be home based, some are going to be school based. We're pretty much, yeah, being flexible in our approach and making sure that we can work it. And then I need to make sure that like like team utilization and expectations are aligned with that, because there's some travel involved, and that's not
Mhm.
necessarily downtime. That can be quite a big day. So obviously they can't see as many clients. And yeah, it's just I feel like that kind of openness and flexibility on how the schedule looks is really important, and it needs to be collaborative. So it's a bit
Mm.
harder to land on than I originally anticipated, I think.
Yeah, because you're constantly having to work with the needs of the child. So
Mm,
everything's unique. We have talked a lot about systems on the podcast, but it's sort of having a system on how to be flexible, which sounds
mm,
crazy because you can't just sort of do the same stock standard for every single child. Like we
mm,
said, depending on their needs, depending on the family, depending on the school, and that environment and what they're needing. Um, yeah, I guess the main thing is that we always talk about like regulation, how our emotions affect the
mm,
children. So it's creating that sort of reassurance, reassurance that it's okay to be flexible, reassurance that it's
mm,
okay to problem solve, reassurance,
mm,
that it's okay to uh, like things don't need to be perfect, right? Like it's not about being completely ready for school. Like we just need to be adaptable. But if we can do that and help the parents and as clinicians to be calm, that will then help the children to be a bit calmer. I'm preaching to myself as I'm saying this as a mum, but yeah.
totally. But what was I just thinking? I had a really good thought then.
Like,
That's right. I think it comes down to values. Like if you have your values really clear, and everyone, so your like mission is really clear. So we engage kids through fun movement so that they can thrive holistically. And
mm,
our mission is to leave, that no child is left behind. So when you look at it through that lens, I think that it really, then you can be flexible in how that is delivered and what it looks like. So long as we're aligning to those values and that mission, it doesn't need to be one set way. And you know
mm,
what? Opportunities, and from a business perspective, different opportunities are going to come up. You might get new ideas. Like you and I have done so many different things to kind of work to what our purpose is. So I
mhm.
think knowing those values and what you're like, the big picture of what you're trying to achieve, and getting your team on board with that is probably the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We did do an episode about last year on this podcast. We did an episode about school readiness versus school preparation. So we might link that in the show notes underneath as well, because that was a very practical episode and we went through like all different specific skills that children need in order to be ready for school and prepared for school. And we talked about the difference between sort of life skills versus being academically ready. And we talked a lot about specific clinical things that we would target in therapy and what we do. So that if you're listening to this episode and you're wanting a little bit more information, specifically, we'll link that in the show notes below so you can go back and listen to that. But this is just, like we said, we've put three hats on and we're discussing this topic of transition from being a parent, a clinician, and the business point of view. So we hope that it's been helpful just to sort of touch on those areas for you guys. And if you have any questions about like specific children or things or strategies of how to support children, just send us a message or leave us a comment. And if you also have strategies that you found really helpful, or maybe like logistics that have helped you in organizing this transition and this process in your business or as a clinician, we'd also love to hear because we're always all open to different strategies and how we can work together and collaborate. But yeah, it's like we said, it's just an ongoing process, isn't it? Supporting the transition. And we hope that all of your children and your clients, and if you're a parent, that your children have successful transitions for whatever that looks like for you as they go into the end of the month, January 2026, and moving into February, and that you have grace for them and grace for yourself in that time. Until next time, we will speak to you next week.
Bye.